लोकाचार्याय गुरवे कृष्णपादस्य सूनवे संसारभोगिसन्द्रष्ट जीवजीवातवे नमः कौडिन्यवंशपरिवारिधिपूर्णचन्द्रं श्रीमत्पराङ्कुशपदां भजभृङ्गराजं रङ्गारदेशिकपदाप्तशिदेशिकत्वं श्रीरामकृष्णगुरुवर्यमहं प्रपद्ये।
श्रीमती यतीन्द्रवर्योगी पदार्थभृंगं श्रीबाणशैलमुनिवर्यदैकपात्रं विज्ञानवेदशिखरोद्भव तत्त्वबोध्यं रामानुजं कलिजितमुनिमाश्रयामः श्रीमच्छटार्यत्राजकृपावलम्बं सौम्योपयन्त्रगणादिमुनीन्द्रवत्तं वेदान्तविषदीकरणप्रवीणं रामानुजं यतिवरं गुरुमाश्रयामः।
जय श्रीमन्नारायण। With last session we spoke about Leela. Leela as an outcome of Anandam. We spoke about the Prayojana Rupa Leela and Karya Rupa Leela. Prayojana Rupa Leela is a Tadattvika Rasa. That means the innate ability to perform action because he can. Karya Rupa Leela, because he enjoys it. It is very important for him. This is where the question one can arise here. Why does Bhagawan need to perform Leela for Anandam? Is he short of Anandam so he performs Leela? Or does he have Anandam and he wants more? If there is infinite Anandam, how can there be more? So this Bhasya was done by another, Ramabhadracharya explains this very well in his Brahma Sutra Bhasya. He says that like when you are listening to music or when you are doing something, you are gaining a lot of pleasure. Even if you are sitting static, your body starts moving out of Anandam. The Krida happens not for Anandam, as an outcome of Anandam. So the Leela is not doing for Anandam because he is in a state of Anandam, Leela is happening.
It's the process that's Anandam. It's not the result of the process.
Because he is enjoying and through that the Leela is happening. When he is moving.
That happens when Jivatmas like us can get a chance for moksha.
Yes. We're just getting a chance. Let's hope it happens.
But no. I will not say hope. I am guaranteed.
That's what I was going to correct myself. Because
I am guaranteed. Otherwise, I'm doubting my Acharya. So I am guaranteed.
Our Acharyas have said that through this process of Shastra Vihita Sharanagati, however I may be the worst of human beings, the worst of animals, he should not leave my hand. That is the essence of Sharanagati. And if he does not leave my hand, he'll find a way to take me. And Shastra Pramana says that in this lifetime, after this lifetime, I should not come back. So whatever I do wrong, I'll face it here and go. Because our Acharyas have said it, the entire premise of our existence is the Ashirvadam of our Acharya. Therefore, we will attain moksham.
Yes. When people have asked me, how can you be so guaranteed? I said no, not me. Ranganayaki Tayar and Ranganatha gave promise to Ramanujacharya. So what more do I need? That's all. I'm done.
We should be in a state more sure about moksha than the identity of our own parents. That they are. That much more certain you need to be.
Yes.
And with that certainty, ahamkara must not come, because actually with that certainty only humility will come. You see, because the certainty is in clarity or the lack of clarity. Both will create certainty. If you know enough to be certain, or there is ignorance and therefore you are certain. You can be certain as an outcome of ignorance also. Both are equally important, good. Because as long as you are certain for Sharanagati, or for moksha, Bhagavad Kainkarya and Bhagavad Kainkarya can start.
Mhm.
Until then, no Kainkarya can happen because you are performing action for result for yourself.
Right.
Bhagavad Kainkarya can only start and Bhagavad Kainkarya can only begin once you realize that there is nothing left for me to achieve anymore. Or that I don't care. Both ignorance will also lead to it. That's the reason why in Kali Yugam, Sharanagati is so important, because with the limitation of our knowledge, our knowledge base, our ability to remember, our ability to cognize, we still have the access to phalam. Our shastra are so benevolent that they may not give you adhikara for karma, but they will never remove your adhikara for the karma phala. They may say don't do karma kanda, but they never say that you will not receive an apple after it. I think that is one aspect of our life we must contemplate very deeply upon, the karma phala. And therefore, instead of adhikara, we start looking for responsibility. What is our responsibility? Not what is my right.
Mhm.
Don't search for your right. Perform your responsibility.
Right, automatically.
An outcome of these responsibilities will grant you the rights that you truly deserve.
Very
In the temple in Vrindavan, my Swamiji was saying that there are great, there are certain practices which allow only certain people to enter. Like for Sabrimala, for instance, certain
Mhm.
practices have certain nishedas.
true.
There are temples where when you go to the Garbhagriha in the wrong time, you'll have to bathe Bhagavan again. Whoever it is, even the same Purohit who goes there in the wrong time touches does something. So there is a certain, in some temples, the food from outside cannot be fed to Bhagavan. You must give him the food that is prepared there by those people only. But there have been great exceptions that have been made. In general, the Garbhagriha Bhagavan samskaras are done by Brahmana who are inside, performing the Karma Kanda in an Anukula Vastram. But there are times when great devotees who have surpassed the physical body of Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, and being Shudra by birth, have been allowed to do anything he wants, even though that may be beyond the vidhi of his varna,
Mhm.
because of his ability, of his communion with Bhagavan, of his devotion to Bhagavan. Once the fruit is the devotion, once you have attained the fruit, the means have no consequence. Yet our acharyas perform the varnashrama dharma even after receiving fruit, so that we are not misled.
I mean, if you take all the 12 acharya, 12 alvars of our sampradayam, how many of them are brahmanas by birth?
Exactly.
Nammalvar itself is not.
Correct.
Nammalvar itself is not. He's neither nor a Vaishya nor a Kshatriya, right? Nammalvar itself is not. So, but we place him at the very top. So there are only, we can talk of Periyalvar, Andal, and one other. So out of the 12, we can only put three.
Three.
Everybody else is non-Brahman.
They could have chosen. They could have chosen to come in the Brahman body if they required. They realized that it is not necessary because they did not see the Bheda.
Right. So that is important for people to understand. It is there is no varnashrama in that sense that we are forcing people to do. You do what you have to do and keep going, right? Because Kulashekara Alvar was a Kshatriya, he was a warrior king, right? Who could even think that he wanted to go and protect Rama in the war whenever he heard Rama's name going to war. right? That was his people had such a hard time keeping him together and controlling him to control the country, right? Because he was so engrossed that whenever they talk about Rama going to war with Ravana, he wants to go. This is like, millions of years later. But that was his communion with the Lord, right? Anyway, I didn't mean to digress you, but
No. I'm not aware of the stories of Alvar. So this is a good opportunity for me to learn. Where were we?
So that's what we say, that yes, there are Alvars, there are Acharyas, there are Bhaktas and their stories where they didn't have to follow the Vidhi, but the Vidhi is put there for a reason for us to
Yes.
follow, because we shouldn't make a mistake, right? Once we follow the Vidhi, that process in itself will give the fruits, will make us understand. But that Vidhi to follow is set for a reason, and we all need to be there.
that's where you were heading.
Yes. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, when we talk about vidhi, or what we call rules now, rules, vidhi and nisheda, right? The vidhi, there are exceptions, and they'll point out the exception. See, this Acharya's wife, Mata, she gave Gayatri Diksha to people. She chanted this and gave Diksha when women are not allowed to give. Why can't we give? The unfortunate mistake in this logic is that there is an exception because there is a rule. The exception does not become the rule. Exception must remain an exception to establish the superiority of the rule.
Exactly.
The exception supports dharma in that context to preserve the rule. The exception is not there to preserve the exception. If that was the case, Shankaracharya would have abolished the Varnashrama. Ramanuja Swamiji would have abolished the Varnashrama. An Acharya of that caliber, Vedanta Desik Swamiji, would have abolished the Varnashrama. All our Acharyas who have come from the Vedic Sampradayas should have abolished the Varnashrama, saying that this is not right for the Sanatana civilization. But they did not. Even in the Kali Yuga, they all came in Kali Yuga. Alvars came Kali Yuga. Hence, we must be able to understand that exceptions are to establish the rule, not to digress from it. And here we'll understand the forms of Karana, because Karana gives rise to Karyam. What is Karya and how is it that Bhagavan is the Karana for Karya, which is Srishti? So how many kinds of Karana are there? There is Upadana Karana, Nimitta Karana. These are the two main, and there is Sahakari Karana. So what is Upadana Karana? Ghata Patadi. To make them, Ghata is vessels, Pata is clothes. So to make them, you require Upadana Karana. You require clay, mud. You require sutra, sutam, kapasa. You require cotton, fiber. So ghatadi, that is upadan karana. To put the upadan karana cannot perform action because it does not have sankalpa shakti, because upadan karana is necessarily jada. Therefore you have nimitta karana. चेतन करता ही निमित्त कारण होता है. Like the potter, Julaha and so on, potters and darji, weavers, all these. They are nimitta karana. So they change the form of the upadan karana to form something else. But then you require sahakari karana as well. What is it? When the potter makes the pot, let's assume he's making a pot, he requires a danda he requires the chakra,
Yeah.
he requires water,
Water.
and he requires so many sahakari vastu, that which will help in creating. The end product will not have either the chakra, it will only have um, um, the upadan karana within it,
It's a catalyst, if you would.
a catalyst which will allow for the formation of the product without itself interfering with the product. So Bhagavan is all of these three.
Mhm.
So from the sukshma chidachit vishishta rupa, he is upadan karana. The sukshma, I'll explain to you as we move ahead. Yeah, this is when I was reading it, I had to read it 2 times. Upadana karana, sankalpa vishishta rupa is a nimitta karana. So upadan karana means in this sukshma form. Here, where you understand the word sukshma, you must understand the most rudimentary form below which there is nothing. It cannot be broken down into anything simpler than that. And then you have something called kala vishishta rupa, which is the sahakari karan. Because without samaya, कालोस्मि लोकक्षयकित प्रवृद्धो लोकान् समाहर्तुमिह प्रवृत्तः अर्तेऽपि त्वां न भविष्यन्ति सर्वे एव स्थिताः प्रत्यनीकेषु योधाः. So he is saying the Kala is the Sahakari Karana here. Even though that he is him, it is him only. Therefore, Sahakari is also one of the things. Therefore, Kala must be him also, you can say, because he is all three of them. So, Abhinna Nimittopadana Karanam. What is that? So, the first question worth asking is, if Bhagavan is the Upadan Karan of Srishti, then how can he be Nirvikar? Right? Because Srishti essentially means Vikara. Vikaras Padam, which changes from one form to another. So now we understood the 3 main causes, forms of causes. The question is, what is Abhinna Nimittopadana Karana? Let's keep the Sahakari Karana aside because that is in the process. It does not define the system by itself. For instance, when you see the pot, it does not really matter if the wheel is electric or manual. You may not be able to make out also. It may be that perfect. But from the pot you can make out it is made of clay. What clay it is from the pot. You may not be able to make out. So therefore we'll keep the Sahakari Karana aside for the moment and just focus on the Nimitta Karana, Padana Karana. So he's saying Bhagavan is both Nimitta as well as Upadan Karana, and that is called Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. That is Bhagavan. In this world, the material cause, which is the Upadan Karana, and I just used the word material cause, I didn't know what to use. So I thought Upadan material cause is a good thing. And the Nimitta Karana, I call it intelligent cause. So,
It's basically Sankalpa Shakti. Right?
Sankalpa Shakti, that's what. But, and because then this Nimitta Karana are different. And the Nimitta Karana is Jada in this world. You see. Jada is unintelligent entities, hence cannot take Sankalpam. Therefore, Nimitta Karana of the intelligent cause is always a sentient entity. Nimitta Karana must essentially be a sentient entity. An insentient entity cannot be a Nimitta Karana. So there is one sutra in the Brahma Sutra, Prakritischa Pratigya Drishtantanu Parodhat. So according to this sutra, both Nimitta and Upadan Karana Bhagavan only. So in the Upanishad, Ved Bhagavan basically says that by knowing Brahman, you'll know everything. Right? Now just remember this, okay? Upanishad is saying that by knowing Brahman, you know everything. Ekoham bahusyam. That there was one only, it became many, right?
Yeah.
So by knowing this one, you should know many. Now the clay is the material cause and the pot is the karyam. So cause and effect. Karan is clay and karya is the pot. So knowing the nature of the clay and knowing that that very clay becomes that pot. If you know the nature of the clay, you will know the nature of everything that the clay is made of. And having knowledge of the clay, you will know the attributes of the pot. Similarly, knowledge of Brahman. I'm using word Brahman because every time I say Brahma, also sometimes people mistake Brahma for Brahma, and then there is great confusion. So when I use Brahman, like the people in Tamil Nadu will say Brahman. So that this is the Brahman. It makes it easier that this Brahman is not talking about Brahma but Brahma. So knowledge of the Brahman will provide us the knowledge of the Jagata. As the Jagata is the made of the same primordial entity that the Brahman is made of, and will hence make us realize that the Jagat is only Brahman. I follow you. Knowing that pot is clay and everything the clay is made up of, one you find out the other. Knowing that and knowing that Bhagavan is the Upadan Karana and Jagata is an outcome of the Upadan Karana, knowing Brahman, you will know the Jagat. So everything that must exist can be known just by knowing Brahman. So knowing Brahman, you will have the knowledge of the entirety of creation. So why is it that us as Sanatana Dharma followers, as Hindu, there is one very good video I watched on the meaning of the word Hindu. I will send it. I will find it first. Okay. It's a beautiful piece. It's not very long. It's in Hindi, but I think you can grasp most of what he's saying. I keep digressing from the path and I forget sometimes what I'm saying. We must understand that the Brahman, of knowledge of the Brahman will give. Oh yes, I was telling you that the reason why we say we focus more on Adhyatmic Jnana and not Bhautik Jnana is Bhautik Jnana is an essence of Adhyatmic Jnana. Adhyatmic Jnana is Sampurna Bhautik Jnana and more. You see, now you understand, Bhautik Jnana is studying the Jagat in part because you don't have the capacity to study the Jagat in full. How long will you have? How many lifetimes will you have to live? So what do we do instead? We want to understand Jagat in full actually. Those who are spiritual are actually wanting to understand Jagat in full but are lazy. They don't want to go one after the other. So what they do is a shortcut. Find the nature of Brahman, you will understand the nature of everything. That is also possible when you understand the nature of one thing so well that it reflects the nature of Brahman. That is one of the concepts of Tantra also. You have these concepts in Tantra where you will suddenly attain realization by just looking in the sky or just looking at the river and so on. It is not just looking, but it is about the sudden realization of the nature of that one entity which is reflecting the nature of Brahman within it. Looking at the pot, taking, let's do radiocarbon dating because there may be some bacteria in that at some point and there may be some remains of that. Let's assume. You radiocarbon date that, you'll find how old it is. So knowledge of how old it is within that pot. Knowledge of how old Brahman is within his existence, this reality only. It is reflecting upon that, what we are trying to get. So the Shruti clarifies that knowing that one Brahman, you will know everything. This is only possible when Brahman is also the Upadan Karan. No. By knowing the potter, you will not know what pots. how the pots are. What if I know? Let's assume there is Kumar Ravidas. One potter is there. Let's assume his name is Kumar Ravidas. It's a nice name. Now, if he is because Ravi is Bhagavan's Chakshu. Chandrama manaso jatas chakshoho suryo ajayata. So therefore, now Kumar Ravidas, he is the Das of Ravidas of Bhagavan only then. So I haven't discriminated, that's what I was saying. And so if I know him as a potter, it will not give me clarity as to what he has made. But if I see his pot, it will give me clarity as to what he has used to make it. So, knowing Brahman, if you are able to understand the world, that means that Brahman must be Upadan Karana, not just Nimitta Karana. As some Sampradaya may say that Bhagavan creates and leaves the creation aside. He is not part of the creation. No. The only way to know this Jagat through Brahman is when Brahman himself is Upadan Karana as well. So the material which makes this world is also out of him only, not just Sankalpam. Tadatmanam swayama kuruta. Taittiriya Upanishad. यह श्रुति ब्रह्म का ही जगत रूप में परिणाम कहती है. ब्रह्म ही परिणाम रूप में जगत है. This jagat is not just made by Bhagavan, but it is Bhagavan as well. When you see one pot nicely glazed and painted, and another one glazed not painted, and another one neither glazed nor painted but the same shape. The one which is neither glazed nor painted, you will know the earthen pot. Which is glazed, you'll have to look a little bit. It's shining. Okay, they must have rubbed upon it. It is earthen, but the one which is polished and glazed, you don't know what is within it. You can assume it is earthen, but you don't know. You see. That avarana is covering it. This Srishti is like this. It is Bhagavan. But the avarana is not allowing us to see who this is. You see. We see the water bottle, we don't see Bhagavan. We see Akshara, we don't see Bhagavan. We see computer, we don't see Bhagavan. It is the limitation of ourselves. But it is right here. It is the eyes we need. No? Sadeva Somyedamagra Asid Ekameva Dutiyam. Right? सृष्टि के पूर्व में अन्य निमित्त कारण से रहित एक सद ब्रह्म ही था. There is only one Brahman before the Srishti. He is saying. This is in the Chandogya Upanishad. Pratyaksha drishyamana jagata. Idam. He is referring to jagata. And here he is saying that before Srishti there is only one. And let's call that Sat. Sadeva Somye Damagra Asid Ekameva Dutiyam Sadeva Sat Eva. Sukshma Chidachid Vishishta स्थिति को हम सत कहते हैं. So when Bhagavan is in a Sukshma Avastha. Now, what is this Sukshma Avastha? Brahman is qualified by both Chitta and Achit. And both Chitta and Achitta, and of course Ishwara, is all Nitya. And Anadi, meaning there is no point of where it did not exist. So it had to be created. Then once creation happens, this Sukshma Chidachid Vishishta becomes Sthula Chidachid Vishishta. The Karana Avastha and the Karya Avastha. Yeah? Like the clay, the cause which is the clay is of one type. The effects are many. Brahman is also, the cause is one type, the effects are many. So that same Brahman will give rise to the Vriksha, to the Deva, to the Gandharva. to the Preta. To be fair, the body of the Preta, because the Atman is also Vishishta Bhagavan. So therefore, the Atman also must be him only. So it gives rise to the Manushya. And everything else from that one only, Ekam Meva Dvitiyam. That is called Ekatvat Avastha. That is the Sukshma Avastha, where all are one. That's why we say Vishishta Advaitam. That state when it is one. Sukshma Avastha. विशिष्टा अद्वैतम, एक ही हैं हम, भगवान एक ही हैं. नाम और रूप के विभाग से रहित अवस्था. Now we will discuss this Nama and Rupa and we'll call it an evening, because this Nama and Rupa takes some time. What is Nama and Rupa? That's an open question. Then we'll discuss.
Answer.
Yes, open question. You must answer.
Open question. That's what.
Nama and Rupa is giving the shape for something that you need to understand, right? So Rupa is a form, and then you give it a name, so that in this materialistic existence, we can identify with that.
Yes. Let me ask you another question. Is Rupa absolute or is it relative? And why?
Rupa is relative because it is in the perception of my understanding, right? So when I understand something, it is my perception of the understanding of that item or that being. So for me, Rupa is perception. It is not the absolute. Because of how I perceive and how someone else perceives, that Rupa differs.
Okay.
Or Rupa can be many.
Okay. And one more question.
Nama too.
Nama, is it absolute or relative?
That's what I'm trying to say. The same applies to Nama too, because so when I say Dev Darshan, until I see you, how I see Dev Darshan is different from what Viju sees.
Because
But
that's the understanding.
Understanding, right? So the Rupa in our mind is different, right? But again, it might be the same Dev Darshan, but it could be a totally different. Some other person can be called a Dev Darshan too. So it's also relative depending on where you are in that sense, right? Even a tree can be called Dev Darshan, right?
The same thing with Namam, and that is the whole reason why we have Sahasranamam. Otherwise, we can say Rama, 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 and that it gives the same. The Sahasranamam is Sahasram because one Nama connects to me in a different way. Someone else will connect with the different Nama, right? So
because all Namams are is Namam only, but each one of those means something different to different people.
and the
right?
way you connect.
And that is how you at least, yes, connect, right? Connect to the Lord. I do not know if you answered our question, but it must be at least put for thought.
No. Now let's try and delve deeper into this. Okay. In the Sukshma Avastha, is there Nama and Rupa? And why? See, I'm asking you the question and not answering by myself, because if you think, it will make it easier for you to understand.
So when you so you'll have to say Sukshma Avastha of Bhagavan is what you're talking about.
Yes. Sukshma Avastha of Bhagavan.
Sukshma Avastha by definition should have a Rupa, right? Because that is why we say it is in small form, basically. Minute form, that which cannot. So there is a Rupa. What is the shape? Do not know, right? It's got some form, right? It has to have a form. But does it have a nama? Mm,
I think even in a sukshma, the sukshma form, or it's like matter at the most
elementary form.
elementary form.
Mhm.
Yes, it should have a name and
Well,
a rupa at that also, but that
again,
again
again differ. It's relative, right? The
it's
name.
all everything is relative. Everything is relative, but if you take, so in our example that we went through, clay is the base, that is the material from which it was then becomes many things, right? But that base, the substance from which something comes, also has to, at its very elementary form or basic form, it is something.
Again, that is needed only for you to connect. Otherwise, you don't need to have a nama.
In the relative.
Yes.
In the relative.
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Good that there is some kind of discussion. Now think about it this way. Nama and Rupa. Rupa actually does not mean form as much as it means shape.
Shape.
How you see it. Regardless, that is a little consequence. In the Sukshma Avastha, you must understand, the only observer is Bhagavan, and the only observed is Bhagavan. If you are only yourself by yourself, just like when you sleep or when you wake up, the only thing that is necessary for self-evaluation and self-assessment and self-establishment is I am. The state of being. What am I is not necessary. So Nama is not necessary. Nama must be given to an entity that is other than the self. There must be more than one. Father has a son or a daughter. I mean, parents have a son or a daughter. One. Therefore, you give the name Namakaran. Father gives the name. Whatever name is given is because there is more than. If only I existed, there is no requirement for a name. The concept of name is distinguishing factor.
Yeah.
Identity is an outcome of distinguishing factor. I need to distinguish one from the other. Therefore, I attribute one identity to one thing and another to another. And that identity is the name. Therefore, the older one will be called so and so, the younger one will be called so and so. There is a distinguishing factor. Therefore, if there is only one, name is not necessary. In that Sukshma Avastha, Sukshma here does not mean small as much as it means the most rudimentary state of existence. Means it only exists. If it exists, it cannot have a form. For a simple reason is form is a limiting entity, firstly, to begin with. Form limits. The nature of the statement of the use of the word form is that it restricts from being anything else. So recognition can happen in two ways. You either know what it is or you know what it is not. I know that is not a circle, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
A form can only be discerned if there is something relative, and that was the question I asked. Is form relative or absolute? And it is relative. Because the form essentially can only be discerned if there is a relative form to discern it against. If there is only a circle, then there is no. I'm just giving an example. In a two-dimensional image, you see a circle. That's all it is. You just see one line. Whatever you may do, that circle will always be a line. Whatever the diameter is, that is the line. You see, it does not change. But once you see a shorter line, then you say, okay, this is shorter line, that is longer line. Come in the three-dimensional. One is a circle and one is just a line. Two-dimensional, sorry. Then you look up and say, this is a circle, this is a line. But if there was only, in that two-dimensional, there were only lines, there was nothing to discern it by. So Nama and Rupa can only exist when there is more than one. When there is a relativity factor. So at the time of Ekatva Avastha, when there is everything is just one, Advaita, there is no Vibhaga of Nama and Rupa. There cannot be. Please let that soak really well, because it's sometimes it appears as if we have understood, but there are certain things we may not have grasped completely. Let me repeat this one part again and I'll ask you a question. So, why should an entity which is by itself not have a Nama and Rupa? Is because firstly, to have a Rupa, you require an observer. And that which is observed. If a tree falls in the forest and you are not there, did it make a sound? The question. The answer is, it is of no consequence since you are not there. Just like that, if only I am there, do I have a form? Is of no consequence, because whether I have a form or not can only be asked when there is a form more than one. But because only I exist, there is no need for a form. When in an Advaita Avastha, when we are only one, the state of being one dissuades from us from having a name, because it is of no consequence. And secondly, if I had a form, if Bhagawan, sorry, now let's go back to Bhagawan. If Bhagawan had a form, that would limit his existence, and therefore he will not be Ananta, he will be Anta. He will be limited to a form. So the only other way of having no form is by having all forms.
Everything.
And therefore he does. In the Sthula Avastha, he has multiple forms. And in the Sukshma Avastha, he has no forms. And only Bhagavan can have contradictory qualities in that same entity. He is both. He is formless and with all forms. Now does that make sense why we can't have Nama and Rupa in the Sukshma Avastha?
Yeah, it does.
So Nama Rupa hi nahi hota. Now the question. If Nama and Rupa are not there in the Sukshma Avastha, then which is the Upadan Karana and which is the Nimitta Karana? There is only one.
It's all the same.
It has to be the same. It has to be the same.
Why?
Well, again, do you need it is a different discussion, right? But if there is one, it has to be the same, right? Do you need it? If there's only one existence, then you don't need anything, right? Because it exists. That's all, right? You don't need anything. But if it has to, the one has to take many forms, then that itself becomes the Upadana Karana and the Nimitta Karana.
Yes, correct. Therefore, the Ekameva Dvitiyam, Advitiyam. So if Sat here, which is the Sukshma Avastha, is the Upadan Karana and there is no other, therefore the Nimitta Karana also must be Bhagavan only. That's how you establish that Bhagavan is both the Nimitta and Upadan Karana. Did that tie in, or did I fumble it?
It does.
You are trying to say that this Jagata, Bhagavan is the Jagatasya Karana. So we say that this Jagat must have its rudimentary cause. In a state of rudimentary cause, there must be no name or form, because that must be, only then it can be rudimentary. But if there is only one, it has to be Upadan Karana. But Upadan Karana is Jada, it has no intelligence. Then how can it form creation, like the Big Bang as we say here? So the entire concept of the Big Bang theory is that there is the Upadana Karana, which is Jada Vastu, and Jada Vastu by chance has created this universe. The only point of difference in our Shastram and what they are basically trying to perceive is, our Shastra is saying that yes, Upadan Karana must be that primordial infinite point of infinite potential, infinite potential, that point where it breaks. And that is the Upadan Karana. But without Chetan Vastu, Upadan Karana cannot perform Karyam. Therefore, a Sankalpa Chetana must remain, and that must be the Nimitta Karana, that must be Bhagavan. So the question is, if Brahman is the Upadan Karana, there will be Parinam Rupa Vikara. You see, because now he is the Upadan Karana, he must change, right? Parinam Rupa Vikara must be there. However, Bhagavan is Nirvikara. How is this possible? Shruti says Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. अनंत जो है, जो निर्विकार है, सत्य है. सत्य का मतलब निर्विकार है. Satya here referring to Nirvikar. How is it possible? So now we understand what we studied in Achit Prakaranam, that the Sukshma Chidachid Avastha of Brahman never changes. For instance, when you the atomic theory, right? Let's take what makes many aluminium, for instance. Let's take aluminium. Aluminium is widely used nowadays. Al 3+. Sometimes we got Al 2+. And then when you're just using Al as an atom, even then you'll have those those ultimate shell electrons which are moving across those plates. The same thing, it is just Al. It is disforming into different forms. But Al is not changing. Now, it is actually changing because through chemistry, you know more than me. The A is changing because the number of electrons are reducing and increasing. And even in those, I don't know how many isotopes of aluminum are there, but if they were, the neutrons will also differ. Protons will differ. Depends on what you have removed and what you have put. They will differ. So the isotopes will also, if the protons differ, then the element will differ. So neutrons will differ for isotopes. Yes, I forgot now. So if you see, that the aluminum will remain the same. It will form a plate. It will form everything. So just like that, Bhagavan, the rudimentary aspect of Bhagavan, the Chitta will remain the same. But the Chitta will give rise to the bottle. Chitta will give rise to the rickshaw. Chitta will give rise to the Shariram. So he is still Nirvikara, he doesn't come under the purview of Vikara.
Or destroy or go down or anything. The Chitta, that the rudimentary form still stays in its full force, fully always.
Yes.
That is critical, because
it is like us, right? If we want to really understand that it's me, 2 years old, 3 years old, 5, 25. I have changed. I have taken a form. Something has happened.
But your Atma is still the same.
But me as me, okay, if I start remembering from 12 to 50, and most of us at 50, we say, no, I never changed. I never grew old. I am the same. We don't even take the factor that we are growing old.
Every single day.
Right? We are not growing old. We say, no, I'm not growing old. I'm the same. How are we the same? Right? So if we think of it that way also, that I have remained the same, but there are so many changes and forms of what has happened to me.
That is how I have in general established the existence of Atman with too many people.
Right.
Because the sense of I does not perish from the time you are 5 years old to the time you are 50 or 100 years old. I am. You still say I am.
Yeah.
I am young, I am middle aged, I am getting old, I am old, I am going to die, I am dead. So, but I am. Even when you say I am dead, I am.
Yeah.
The I is unchanging. The body completely changes every 15, 20 years. You see,
Yeah.
most of the cells and all that, it is gone through an entire cycle. But we
Yeah,
still
and
say
if
I
you
am.
take it that too, right? Like I have so many cells. My body is made up of cells. I have hair. I have different shapes of nose and eyes. So if you look at it that way, that I have got so many avayams. So
So you
there's
can
that.
ask the question, right? If there is an amputation, is that person less now? The question is,
Yeah.
does he feel less? Is he less now or is he the same? In the sense,
Yes, sir.
in the absence of a part of the body, does the self tend to perish? The Jain would say, I don't know. But actually the Jain would say, he says that the Atman is within the body, so it will take shape of the body. Therefore, if the amputation is happening, the Atman would have reduced.
Reduced. Yeah.
We'll not get into the Tarkam. But we are in this position here today to understand that this Nama Rupa, there is one Nama Rupa Vibhedena Falvyachakalaya Kritaha. There is one shloka in the Gajendra Moksha Stotram. And it is basically talking about how Bhagavan has here the word is Kshudra. Kshudra here meaning small. It does not mean worst, but it means small. So all the Devatas and everything have been made by a Kshudra part of Bhagavan, meaning the smallest of the small parts of Bhagavan has made entire creation, essentially, with name and form. From the Nirguna, he says, wait, I forget the full. Yeah. Yasya Brahmadayo Deva Veda Lokasharachara Nama Rupa Vibhedena Falvyachakalaya Krita. Yasya Brahmadayo Deva Brahmadi Devata Veda इत्यादि भगवान के क्षुद्र तत्व ने ही बनाया है करके आता है. The smallest of the small part of Bhagavan is enough to create this Nama Rupa world of Nama, name and form. Okay, because pure existence, a state of existence, must be beyond this name and form. Why?
Say that again. The purest form.
The purest form of existence must be beyond name and form. Why?
Because otherwise it becomes bounding. If you say just because of there's no limitations, right? You are saying that only this form and this name is the Lord, then you have put a bound on him. He's limitless. You cannot say anything and say that this is what it is. It is also that. That is all you can say.
Yes.
Make sense?
Yes. Let me just expand upon that. This a state of name and form is essentially a relative entity. I mentioned earlier. Name is only required when there is more than one.
Correct.
More than one means differentiation. If there are two droplets of water, completely identical, there is still differentiation from one big droplet of water to two smaller droplets. But if there is an infinite ocean, if you want two droplets of water, where will the droplets of water be? Because the ocean itself is infinite. So it is in a state of just oneness. This state of pure existence we must understand, because if it is impure existence, it means that it has gone through differentiation.
Mhm.
For instance, take two bottles of identical nature. You touch it, one is hot and one is cold. I'll ask you, get me the bottle. What will you say?
Which one, right?
Then what will I say?
The hot one.
Or the cold one?
Yeah.
So Visheshana is required when there is differentiation.
Yeah.
If both of them were completely identical, and I'll say, get me a bottle, what will you say?
You
Okay.
just go pick one and come.
That's it. You don't have to say anything. You just have to pick one and come. So Nama was only necessary when there was differentiation. Therefore, the pure existence would be if everything is the same in that same state. There is nothing which is other than the same. For instance, everything is only a bottle. For instance, everything is a bottle. Then there is no need for anything else. But because a bottle itself is a differentiated entity, that differentiated entity cannot be infinite in nature in that state. So it can only be an undifferentiated entity which is infinite. And that is called Sat. That is the Sukshma Avastha of Bhagavan. Sukshma Chidachit Vishishta Brahman. सूक्ष्म चित्त और अचित से विशिष्ट विशेष भगवान, और यही सूक्ष्म विचित अचित विशिष्ट भगवान स्थूल अचित अचित विशिष्ट विशेष भगवान बनते हैं. दैट इज विशिष्ट अद्वैत संप्रदाय. Instead of having this Brahman and the reflective essence of the consciousness of Brahman as an outcome of Maya being us, which is Mithya, Ramanuja Swamiji says, no, we are part and parcel of that Brahman, that is right. But from that Sukshma Chidachid Vishishta Brahman, we become Sthula Chidachid Vishishta Brahman, Bhagavan, and we get Shariram based on our karma. And it is not Mithya, it is a Brahma. Meaning this world is not as if it does not exist, it does exist. But it is just not what it seems to be. So remove that Ajnana, that is Viparita Jnanam, with Yathartha Jnana, and using Yathartha Jnana, understand Yathatmya Jnana. That is Anikula Jnana. That is Vishishta Advaita. And finally, we now understand, based on what we studied in Chitta and what we have studied in Achitta, why we are Advaita, because of the Sukshma Chidachit Vishishta Brahman. In that state of Laya. In Srishti, Sthiti and Laya, the Karana, Upadana Karana and Nimitta Karana, Bhagavan. It is not by chance. Whoever thinks this world has happened by chance should only eat food which is cooked by itself. You should ask them to sit in the kitchen, put everything there, and until it cooks by itself, you should not eat. The reason why I keep pointing this out is the only way we understand the concept of Chetana is by bringing us to understand that without Chetana, karma can't be done.
Yes.
And because without Chetana, karma can't be done, we can then attribute Chetana to those actions that we cannot ourselves discern to be done by Chetan Vastu. And therefore we say Bhu Devi, because she is rotating. Surya Dev, he is also moving. He is performing action. He is becoming cooler. He is losing heat. Chandrama, Chanda Mama, no? Because Bhudevi ki behan. Chandrama. We associate these with Chetana, because only through Chetana action can be performed. That's how the pantheon of devatas have come into the Sanatana Dharma. Because we realize that action can only be done through Chetana. Therefore, everything which has some level of intellectual capacity to perform action of intelligence must be a sentient entity. Therefore, we sit under a mountain and pray to the mountain. There's action being performed there. There is a cumulative action. There are individual actions, like our body. It itches on the right hand, it doesn't itch on the left hand. I scratch the right hand, not the left hand. Each of them are individually acting by themselves, like the trees and the plants and the fungi and everything else within that mountain. But the mountain is acting as one entity as well. It is performing the duty of that mountain, the dharma. Therefore, then there must be one pramukh chetana within that mountain as well. It only requires an eye to see it, to be able to observe it. When we live in the forest, we know that there are certain forces which allow us to do things and certain forces that restrict us. So we will worship those which allow us to do things because we want to perform action. We cannot survive without performing action. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. We must perform action that is attributed to us. So if we must perform action to survive, what action must we perform? And discerning that action is dharma. And dharma tells us what action is right. And performing of that dharma gives us punyam. And performing the param dharma of sharanagati gives us neither papam or punyam. And that gives us moksham. And Bhagavad Pada is that state of sukshma chidachid vishishta brahman. But moksha, you will not be within that sukshma chidachid vishishta brahman, because sukshma chidachid vishishta brahman is for lila. You are attaining moksha, which you are going to tripad vibhuti. There laya does not happen. So you want to come out of this sukshma chidachid vishishta brahman and go into the tripad vibhuti. And with that, we will call it an evening. If there is any thoughts.
That's it.
Om Lokacharya Gurave Krishna Padasya Sunave Sansara Bhogi Sandrashta Jiva Jivatave Namaha. Om Narayana Paraveda Deva Narayana Angaja Narayana Paraloka Narayana Paramaka Narayana Paro Yogo Narayana Parantapaha Narayana Param Jnanam Narayana Paragati.